Hey guys, welcome back to Trusted Technology. Today we'll talk about how Taiwan chipmakers hint at decoupling from the US. Let's head into it. Taiwan's chip fabricators signed an agreement on December 3 to create their own semiconductor equipment industry, opening an option to decouple from the West in the view of a prominent US research firm. The Taiwanese initiative responds to Washington's extraterritorial sanctions on buyers of US fabricating equipment imposed by then-President Donald Trump in May 2020. The US asserts the right to block sales of chips produced with US machines or intellectual property. The US sanctions shut off Chinese tech giant Huawei's access to high-end chips of 7nm and below, crippling what previously was the world's top handset producer. Unable to make 5G phones, Huawei lost market share to Chinese handset producer Xiaomi and sold its Honor smartphone business. The US sanctions, though, had little impact on Huawei's telecommunications equipment business, including equipment for 5G infrastructure, which uses older chips that are easier to source. Taiwan will become an advanced semiconductor production center, said Taiwanese Vice Premier Chen Zhongqin, adding that Taiwan would invite chip equipment makers to move facilities to the island. This means that the industry as a whole is growing, and the revenue of domestic funded enterprises is also growing. But the growth rate is much lower than that of foreign-funded enterprises and Taiwan-funded enterprises, Yi added. His speech was reported in the Chinese website Observer. Taiwan's chip producers want to maintain their leadership in China's domestic chip fabrication and will build their own chip-making equipment to prevent US sanctions from slowing their investments on the mainland. The two top providers of chip-making equipment, Applied Materials and LAM, both are American. Tokyo Electron, Japan's largest equipment maker, increases China's sales from 50 billion yen in 2015 to 400 billion yen this year. America's chip industry opposed the sanctions, fearing that foreign chip fabricators would source equipment elsewhere. Trump initially vetoed the sanctions on chip equipment on December 2019, after the US Defense Department argued that it would cut revenues for American equipment makers and reduce their R&D funding. On February 18, 2020, Trump tweeted, "The US cannot and will not become such a difficult place to deal with in terms of foreign countries buying our product, including for the always used national security excuse that our companies will be forced to leave in order to remain competitive." But Trump changed his mind after the COVID-19 pandemic and chose what administration staffers called the nuclear option of banning sales to Huawei of foreign-made chips that use American equipment or intellectual property. The US Chamber of Commerce warned last year for the US semiconductor industry, foregoing the China market would mean lower economics of scale and R&D spending, and a less central role in the full web of global technology supply chains. Decoupling would prompt some foreign firms to de-Americanize their semiconductor activities, putting to the test whether that is possible and further motivating China to seek self-sufficiency. Lost access to Chinese customers would cost the US industry $54 billion to $124 billion in lost output, risking more than 100,000 jobs, $12 billion in R&D spending, and $13 billion in capital spending. China responded with a crash effort to build its own chip fabrication, concentrating on the workhorse sector of 14nm and above. The 3nm to 7nm chip that power 5G smartphones require extreme ultraviolet lithography. Companies like Intel, IBM, Microsoft, and Google, who have lobbied for these subsidies, spend money to buy back their stock rather than invest in chip making. America's top chip maker, Intel, spent $50 billion on capital expenditures and $53 billion on R&D during the past 5 years. But Intel also lavished shareholders with $35 billion in stock buybacks and $22 billion in cash dividends, which altogether used up 100% of Intel's net income. What do you think about Taiwan chipmakers decoupling from the US? Let us know in the comment section. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.